Today we'll be looking at the perception of quality, or the lack of it, and why some tracks sound really good and some tracks sound really bad. I will come back to this in other videos of how to do something which might sound higher quality. I thought a good exercise would be to make something that sounds terrible by breaking loads of the rules. If you follow the rules which people have set out in good tracks, then you'll end up with something good, hopefully, with good sound sources, the bass on the right octave, things in the right place, the mid-range not overloading the framework that the beats create, things like that. So let's make something terrible. Some of this is down to discipline, so you might start off with the right idea of putting the BPM at the right speed, but then you think, oh, that's a good kick, that's a great hi-hat, when actually they're not. To make a really bad track, I've just gone into Cubase, loaded up some things and made some wrong decisions, and I'll run through those, and hopefully this will give you an insight as to how to make a bad record and therefore what to avoid. So first of all, I've gone for a really short kick, but I haven't got a useful bass line underneath it either. So the low end of your track should actually be made up of probably your kick if it's a kick drum track like a house thing, and sub bass if it's drum and bass. But something's going to be in those lower frequencies, which I talked about not being able to hear if you only have monitors and don't have a sub in your room. Anyway, I've chosen a really terrible kick. Doesn't fulfill the function it needs to. Actually doesn't look that terrible, but you can see here it's not got any low frequencies. Let's make it worse. Banging. The next mistake I've made is the bass line that I've written isn't low enough, so we're at the F1, which is 86 Hertz, which isn't really low enough to call sort of sub or bass. So the bottom end of our mix is missing. It's not in the kick and it's not in the sub. It's going to be in one of those two things. Now I tried to choose a really bad clap, but let's make it worse. Let's take its top end off completely, because we want the top end of the mix to be really, really bad. The reason I thought it was a bad clap was how uneven it was when I previewed it. Just sort of had this thing in the middle and it's quite harsh. Not the worst thing in the world actually. This off hat should be. So the problem I'm quickly showing you with this off hat is this peak. A good hat actually takes up a wide frequency range, so it covers a wide frequency range, and that'll sound good across a load of sound systems. So if you play it on rubbish speakers or good speakers, the frequency is going to be fairly constant at the high end. When you're making a track, you should be thinking what makes up the high end and how is that going to come across. And if it's focused at 6.73k and then rolls off by 10k, you'd need something else if you really did like that hat to do the 10k bit for you. The closed hat is also a similar sort of disaster. Instead of doing the top end, it's at 4.5k and then it rolls off as it goes upwards. You can use clunky hi-hats, that's fine, but they have to almost be ironically clunky, so if you are using that, then something will be really, really clear in the track. But intentionally clear and subtly clear perhaps, so you might have another hi-hat which is actually a really good quality one doing the top end. So this is the worst offender, it's the riff. I didn't really write it, I just played something in really badly. But worse than the playing is the EQ, which I shall now show you. So a common fault in records nowadays is that drum samples come from records, so they had a natural roll-off even if they're a good quality hat. And synths don't have any roll-off, they go into sort of outer space, which I've exaggerated here. So you can see even before, so you can actually see the pre and the post EQ here. Even with the pre EQ, you can see that this line goes from here and it just goes on and on, whereas everything else rolls off. And one of the worst things you can do in your tracks is have a synth which goes beyond the hats, because your hats should create a framework within which your synths go. So I've intentionally broken that by having a hat which rolls off and another hat which rolls off, and leaving the synths to do the top end. My best work. And the thing is, this can't actually be saved in the mastering part of the process either, because there's no bass to turn up, there's no bass to find, there's no low octave, and the top end is wrong. This is a first in a series really in the perception of quality. Here today we've got a terrible track, and later I will go through different parts to show you how to get a better quality track.